While the LA River may be an eyesore in some places, local activists are working to make the 51-mile stretch worth seeing.
Some tiny insects are in danger. See why the declining bee population means more than just a honey shortage.
And El Niño may be bringing some new visitors to Los Angeles. Find out why local fishermen are so excited.
The Current is next.
Hello and welcome to The Current, USC's weekly news magazine. I'm Aaron Hendel.
And I'm Helen Flourish. Every Thursday, we'll take an in-depth look at important topics around campus and Los Angeles. This week, we're focusing on the environment and how it affects the lives of Angelenos.
I'm Cindy Robinson. We'll start tonight with the LA River. It's known more for cement than for recreation, but now some activists are trying to change that. Reporter Katie Antonsen visited Atwater Village to see why anyone would want to camp on concrete.
Many Angelenos aren't aware that Los Angeles has a river at all, but it does, and it's not an aqueduct, even though it may look like one. It's 51 miles long, stretching from the San Fernando Valley to Long Beach. 75 years ago, the river was paved over with concrete to stop flood damage to the city, and that's the river we know today. Kind of ugly, kind of bare, and almost invisible.
You know, when it stopped being the primary water source for the city in 1913, that it lost its significance in terms of its importance to the city as a whole. It was used as a dumping ground. It was channelized in the 30s. That even further sort of cemented, no pun intended, but sort of its fate as this storm drain channel. And people forgot of it actually as a river altogether.
Nonprofits have been involved in bringing public awareness to the river since the 80s. One of the younger arts nonprofits, Clock Shop, started hosting programming with California State Parks on a stretch of concrete in Atwater Village. The biannual LA River Campout is one of these events, helping the community find ways to actually get to the river.
The biggest issue is access to the Los Angeles River. Not only because the 51 miles, many of it is concrete lined and there's like these fences that say do not enter. But today we have bird watching, we have fishing, we have, different activities that kind of emphasize the importance of the Los Angeles River to the city.
The river, whether people realize it or not, has a tangible effect on the city, especially in areas like the Glendale Narrows, where the natural life broke through the cement before it could set. It's the closest we can get to how the river used to be.
It's being taken back. We're sitting here camping on cement. When we camped out here in spring, our front door was facing the river, and when we woke up, all we could see was this grass, and all we could hear was the rushing water and the birds. And it's like, hey man, I just forgot I was in the city for a minute.
Community engagement like the LA River Campout goes a long way toward getting Angelenos involved in the future of the river.
Really, what we're trying to do is engage children from the city, show them the importance of what's at stake here, really, in terms of not just the LA River. The LA River is a symbol for everything throughout the country in terms of habitat and open space and parklands that are under threat.
Through events like the campout, people can start to understand a part of Los Angeles that has been misunderstood for too long. With that understanding comes appreciation, and with appreciation comes a will to have a say in what happens next. For The Current, I'm Katie Antonsen.
California's drought is in its fourth year, and many believe water isn't the only thing we're losing. Reporter Madison Keevy shows us which species might not be around much longer.
That's the sound of a busy hive, and those are honeybees. Thousands of them, in fact. While they might seem small in size, their job is mighty.
They're our most important pollinator.
And he should know. Bill Lewis owns Bill's Bees. There, he tends to 1,000 honeybee hives tucked away in the San Gabriel Mountains.
Honeybees were introduced in the United States around 400 years ago. And today, you'll see beekeeping in what you see right behind me, or is something known as urban beekeeping.
Lewis and his bees, like many Californians, are feeling the effects of the statewide drought. It's more than just a shortage of water.
Pollen are the bees' food. And just like people, if you're not getting a sufficient diet, you're going to have health issues.
Issues like fewer wildflowers on roadsides and in orchards. For honeybees, their outdoor offices aren't stocked with enough food. they're overworked and underfed.
When the bees suffer, everything down the line is going to suffer as a result.
At the end of that line is Josh Patigliano. He's an almond farmer in Central California. Almonds are one of the biggest crops in the state that relies on bee pollination.
PR deal.
He told me that this honeybee shortage won't just affect farmers.
And currently, as it is today with the almonds in California, is there are not enough honeybees in California to pollinate all the acres here.
For Patigliano's 1,000-acre orchard, no honeybees means no product. Not just for him, but for consumers.
And tomorrow, the honeybees are gone. We would not have any almonds to eat in our chocolate Hershey bars or our breakfast cereal in the morning.
A risk that has companies like Whole Foods wanting to help. The online and in-store campaigns showed shoppers what shelves would look like if honeybees really did disappear. Patigliano said protecting the honeybees is as much his responsibility as it is others.
If we do not fix this problem, this California is in for a rude awakening of what the honeybee actually does for us.
Both Patigliano and Lewis say anyone can play a role in protecting pollinators. It's as simple as planting a flower to help, well, save the honeybees.
For Annenberg Media, I'm Madison Keevy.
Lead contamination in the water supply of Flint, Michigan has made headlines around the nation. But here in Los Angeles, the residents of Southeast LA are dealing with a lead crisis of their own. Cleanup is underway at homes and businesses in Southeast LA County, where officials say operations at Exide Technologies' battery recycling plant in Vernon may have strewn lead over as many as 10,000 properties. Exide Technologies shut down the plant last March to avoid prosecution for violating federal pollution laws. But the California Department of Toxic Substance Control says it may have left literal tons of lead contamination in its wake. But for many locals, this scene is all too familiar. Miguel Ortega is a resident of the City of Commerce.
I've lived here all my life.
He and his parents share a home near the school Ortega attended as a youngster. Yet despite the plentiful fruit trees and sun-drenched sidewalks, his memories of playing outdoors as a kid aren't all fun and games.
I remember going to the Bell Gardens High School and I wanted to run. I was short of breath. I was always short of breath, and I'm like, I know I was a little bit overweight, but I wasn't that overweight. Yeah. But I felt like it was hurt. My lungs were hurting every time I would go running, and I was like, why are they hurting here? But I would go to the city of Santa Maria and run over there, and I had no problem.
Ortega's home is outside the zone of the highest contamination, but he asked the DTSC to check his soil anyway, just in case. The results?
They checked everything, and there was two or three major spots where it was contaminated, which is right here in the corner and by the back of the garage and on the side of close to the electrical post.
Now Ortega is awaiting a call from officials so he can schedule cleanup on his property. He is frustrated that his 3-year-old nephew can't enjoy the backyard and wonders whether he and his siblings might have unknowingly put themselves at risk while playing outdoors as kids.
He never knew that. I remember my brother and sisters playing in the soil.
But what makes lead so dangerous, especially to young children?
You can't reverse the impacts of lead. So once you get exposed to it and damage happens, it's there with you for the rest of your life.
Dr. Jill Johnston is an environmental scientist at the University of Southern California's Keck School of Medicine. Her research focuses on the long-term social impacts of exposure to toxins in the environment.
Low exposures to lead, that you have deficits in learning, decreases in intelligence, behavior problems associated with hyperactivity or violence. And these have sort of long-term consequences for the kids that are exposed.
Which is all the more reason to take extra care to protect communities like the one Mr. Ortega calls home. To tell us a little bit more about lead in Los Angeles, we have Dr. Jill Johnston here in the studio. Dr. Johnston, thank you so much for making time for The Current today.
Yes, thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So Dr. Johnston, we know you're examining the impact of lead from Exide on communities in Southeast LA, but can you tell us a little bit more about your research and exactly what kind of work you're doing?
Yeah, so I tend to do what we call community-driven research, so trying to look into questions that are really important to communities, and with a particular emphasis on environmental justice communities, so low-income people of color that are impacted by toxic industries. And so one of the big questions from this Exide community is understanding what their exposure has been long term. How much lead is in their body to understand what the health impacts could be.
Got it.
So one way to look at this is to measure lead in baby teeth. And by collecting baby teeth, we can look at lead levels from the mother while she was pregnant and then in the first 2 years of life of the child. So that's kind of the current work that we're doing with the community.
Got it. Okay. So when you do get the results, what do you expect to see based on your experience?
So generally we find that while in utero is when you have the biggest exposure to lead. So I expect to see the most exposure occurring in utero, and then sort of it tapers off as the child grows.
Got it.
But, I mean, based on the data that we have about the lead in the soil, I mean, it seems like lead contamination could be a really big issue for people that are living in this community.
Got it. And, we've been hearing a lot about Flint, obviously, with, their water crisis and having lead in the water. How does that compare to what we're seeing from Exide?
So I think it's still yet to be determined. It's definitely a huge health crisis. That's what we see here in Southeast LA, that this community has been exposed to really high levels of lead for at least 30 years. So, I mean, I think there could be really long-term impacts for the communities there.
Right. And so is lead the biggest concern, do you think, of families living in this area? Or what kinds of things do people who are living here have to deal with besides lead?
Yeah, so unfortunately we see in Southeast LA just a multitude of polluting industries that are near the community. So it's bisected by several freeways that carry, tens of thousands of diesel trucks every day, which release really harmful air pollutants. There's also such things as like rendering plants, which cause really strong odors. There's the rail yard where all the trucks come to ship goods out to warehouses. So there's multiple sources of toxins in the community. That's all adds extra burden onto what it means for people's health.
Right. And so what kinds of things do you think we can do, perhaps just as a community, to maybe alleviate some of this problem for these individuals? Because they had no idea that this was happening to them. So what do people need to know?
So I think it's really important that we do a comprehensive and complete cleanup of the soil in the area so we stop, additional people from being exposed to lead. And then I think we need to take a more holistic approach to addressing these multiple sources of contaminants in the community so that, we don't have these toxic hotspots where people are really overburdened.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Johnston, and really looking forward to seeing the results of your study.
You probably know that El Niño is bringing rain to Los Angeles, but what's bringing El Niño here in the first place? We checked in with some USC students about the cause and effect behind the storms.
What is El Niño?
I have no idea. It's, what's it called? Like a phenomenon that brings hot air.
From what I understand, it's a temperature fluctuation between the East and West Pacific Oceans that occurs naturally every 2 to 4 years.
Weather pattern that's recently been causing droughts in Africa.
What he said.
Pretty close. El Niño is a movement of warm ocean currents due to weak trade winds that affects the jet stream. This can cause flooding in the southern U.S. as well as other effects around the globe.
El Niño is bringing a lot of changes to Southern California, not just on land, but also in the ocean. Reporter Stephanie Wu went out on the water to see some new arrivals brought by the warmer currents.
El Niño is bringing unseasonably warm currents to Southern California, potentially creating storms that could help the thirsty state. But before we see the rain, many species of the tropical fish are riding along the warm flow, including yellowfin tuna, bluefin tuna, mahi-mahi, and the one that excites sports fishermen the most, yellowtail.
There's been a lot of yellowtail, they're big, which is different. We also caught a lot of bonita and surface fish throughout the summer. The water's been probably about 4 or 5 degrees warmer than it normally is. So it's been nice change.
Sports fishermen say it has been epic.
He didn't bite so hard, but start running afterwards. You gotta move with them where they want to go.
Eric is referring to this big fellow.
They're not easy to catch. These are not very big. These are the 15-pounder. bigger one gets 25, 30. Those are super strong.
What is captured on recreational fishing boat cannot be sold per se, but they are certainly a fresh addition to the dinner tables.
We like all the fish. It's just it's more exciting. They fight better. They're harder to catch. They're good to eat.
It also takes more than just strength to bring the freshness home.
Oh, it was instant. Once I hit the bottom, it just took off. I felt it get tight. I swung on it, set the hook, and there she was. Oh boy.
It's one jerk on one end with another jerk on the other.
There it is.
Yellowtail!
Yellowtail,
It's the rush, it's the high. It's the tug of the drug, I think is what they say, or something like that. The tug is the drug.
Other animals in our neighborhood are not so palatable. They're actually quite dangerous. More shark sightings have been reported since last summer. This drone footage taken by Seal Beach Marine Safety and lifeguards shows sharks lingering by the waveline. Authorities advise to not engage with the animals when out in the ocean. Stephanie Wu, Annenberg Media.
Thanks for watching The Current. Next week we'll be looking at sex, love, and relationships just in time for Valentine's Day.
Tweet us your worst first date stories using the hashtag #TheCurrentSC.
You can see all these stories and more online at uscannenbergmedia.com.